team that's not going to give up and do everything possible to make this a series as much as possible. But, we don't make any excuses. We still have enough to get the job done. We just haven't found a way to get it done.
Wise words of John Tortorella from last night in Vancouver, of course. The Canucks finally getting their first preseason win under their belts against the Phoenix Coyotes 6-1. They win, and Emad is going to join me here for our very first podcast. Tyson and Emad here, of course. Evolution 107.9 here at BCIT. Hopefully, you guys going to listen all year round. Emad, how's it going today?
Good, man. Good. A lot of news around the NHL today.
It's crazy. We're going to catch you up on all sports today. So we even got a special guest in for our first podcast ever. He's our insider for the MMA, and he's going to be joining us in about 5 minutes time or so. And we'll
talk a little bit about UFC 165.
Yes,
and what happened there on Saturday in Toronto, actually. So
the ACC.
Yeah.
Guess that was rocking, and there was another fight, of course, the night after. It might have not been MMA involved, but it was the Toronto Maple Leafs and Buffalo Sabres Sunday Night Fight Fest, or whatever it was. But yes, Canucks in action once again tonight. Maud just set that up, of course. No Luongo tonight. Eddie Lack going to be playing. And
Yep. No Zach Kassian, no Dale Weiss. Probably around the same lineup as last night. I mean, by cutting down the roster so short before those suspensions, you really got nothing else there as far as players.
You got Zach Hamilton, who was called up from Utica last night as well, so he's going to play tonight. And,
it's going to be a tough one tonight in San Jose. They never play well there. They're shorthanded, back-to-back games. Yeah, tonight's going to be a rough one, that's for sure.
Yeah, so the Canucks are, of course, in action in San Jose down at the HP Pavilion. That gets going in about just under 3 hours from now. Big win for the Canucks last night, dressing 16 regulars. They were able to come away with the win in preseason action. Yeah, preseason doesn't mean too much right now, but it is a positive stride for the Canucks last night, allowing just the one goal, but they were just able to explode offensively. And it was coming from guys you might not have expected to score. The Sedins weren't really on the score sheet. Kessler and Burrows didn't dominate too much. It was the kids coming around once again.
I thought that I was very impressed with Yannick Weber. I thought he played really well. Especially
what a bomb that was.
Especially, that's the kind of guy they've been looking for since the departure of Sammy Salo. Right-handed defenseman. Great shot. They can use him on the power play. Word out of Toronto today, another suspension in the preseason. Phil Kessel getting 3 preseason games for his role in that big bench clearing brawl in Buffalo. And so here's my take on the incident so far. So you got Dale Weiss elbow on Taylor Hall, 3 games. Then you have Zach Kassian, high stick on Sam Gagner. That's 8 games. And now with the Kessel, the chopping at a player's ankle, two-handed with your stick, and that's 3 games. And this is the issue that has come up with me in particular. Now, I'm looking at this in a total unbiased role here. So Brendan Shanahan looks at all these incidents, and he does hand out the suspension, but we cannot be debating over how many games these players are going to get every single time. There should be a better system in place. Now, here's what I think they should do. They should have a black and white guideline to what suspension is served for what incident. Now, a lot of factors are involved in these incidents. How badly is the player hurt? Is the person who has committed the offense, are they a first time or a second time or a third time offender? And is there intent to injure? There's all these factors, and it's always a debate, and it shouldn't be. There needs to be a black and white guideline to what happens if a player does get hurt. If he is hurt, is that an automatic 5-game suspension? If his intent to injury and the guy doesn't get hurt, as we saw with Phil Kessel, is there an automatic 5 games for that? If the player is a repeat offender, is that automatic 5 games? We need to know black and white when the incident happens, how many games this guy's going to get because of what happened. So that's, I think, what we should lean towards in the NHL. I mean, it's going to be a common issue going forward with all these players getting a random amount of games for what they've done, and it could be argued that the Phil Kessel should be getting 8 games and not Zach Kassian. Phil Kessel meant and intended to hurt John Scott. Luckily for him, nothing happened, and the league is only giving him 3 games. When at the opposite end of the spectrum, Zach Kassian was not trying to hurt Sam Gagner. It happened that he had suffered a broken jaw, and now Zach Kassian has to sit out the first 5 games of the regular season for Vancouver. So, I mean, the NHL needs to wake up and figure out how they're going to issue these suspensions, and it's not doing a good job right now. I'm sorry that the inconsistency is just driving people like me. They're driving them crazy, and I think that they should figure out a way to make it known right when the hit is made by some sort of book or anything how many suspensions the guys are going to get.
And that they do. And Zach Kassian, a guy getting 8 games, 3 preseason, 5 regular season. It's going to be a tough loss for the Canucks. But honestly, this might be a blessing in disguise for some of the young kids who are drafted this year. Hunter Shinkaruk, Bo Horvat, and going back to last year. It looks like Nick Jensen may be heading down to Utica when he is healthy. He was put on the preseason roster in Utica today. So I don't know. It's something the Canucks are going to look for. But we're going to have more info and more topics and stuff going on with the Canucks in just a bit. But we are pleased to present the one, the
Mr.
only...
Kyle Taylor!
Kyle Taylor is in studio today with us. And Kyle, you are the MMA insider. How's it going today?
So far, so good, fellas. How we doing?
It's going. And basically, you're going to talk to us about UFC 165 in Toronto this past weekend.
What happened?
Little this, little that, man. It was a hell of a night of fights. Let me start there. All the main card pretty much lived up to its hype, and even more, especially in the main event. But I'll certainly get to that. Let me just do a quick rundown of little match results for you. I think opening on the prelims, they had Daniel Omielancevic defeated Nandor Guillemino by KO. And actually, I had that by KO earlier in the fight. It ended up in the 3rd round, but it was a really good way to kind of start the broadcast. We had local Canadian boy Alex Caceres defeated Roland Delorme in a split decision. There was Michel Prazeres who defeated Jesse Ronson by a split decision. Montreal product and TriStar Gym fighter John McDessie defeated Rene Forte with a pretty spectacular KO. I'll get to that as well. I think that was the end of the prelim. They had quite a few Canadian fighters on the card, which is what they always try to do. We had another one of Mitch Gagnon, who actually defeated an undefeated Dustin Kimura by submission, and you can even judge him by Kimura's last name. He is a submission ace himself, so that was a bit of an upset. Stephen Thompson defeated Chris Clements by KO in the 2nd round. Wilson Reyes defeated another Canadian, Ivan Menjivar, by unanimous. Miles Jury defeated the Ultimate Fighter product Mike Ricci by split decision. Mike Ricci's also out of TriStar and trains with Faraz Zahabi and all the other boys at that GSP gym. On the main card, we had Khabib Nurmagomedov, who defeated Pat Healy in just a grinder of a unanimous there as well. Another TriStar product, Francis Carmont, defeated Konstantinos Philippou by unanimous decision. Dana White's not too stoked on that. It's kind of a lay and pray performance, but got the win, got the W no matter what, so that's all you can go there. And we had Brandon Schaub, who defeated Matt Mitrione, and that was a bit of a grudge match because they were formerly best friends, and then some talking got heated on Twitter, and one thing led to another, and that ended in Brendan Schaub subbing him with the Darce choke in the 1st round. And the reason that's maybe a little bit controversial is because Schaub actually just came from a world-class jiu-jitsu competition called Metamoris, where it's pretty much well known that he was embarrassed. He made an embarrassment of himself and just the sport of jiu-jitsu itself. So they actually changed the rules on some of that on that competition as well, because the way he played, he really just didn't engage the guy. He just, it was kind of an embarrassment. But moving on, the final 2 fights were title fights. So we had Henan Barao defeating top prospect Eddie Wineland by TKO, the second round by strikes. So Henan has defended it more times than the actual champion, which is Dominic Cruz, because it's a bit of a tricky situation there, because Dominic has been out for, I believe, probably almost 2 years at this point with some knee injuries. So it's going to be interesting if he can get bounced back and actually get that title unified. The final fight was John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson in a light heavyweight showdown. And that was everything it was billed to be. It was all that and more. So did you guys watch the fights?
Unfortunately, no, I didn't. What was I doing Saturday night? I can't remember.
What are you always doing on Saturday night?
I don't.
You know what? I was recovering. No, I'm just kidding. I was recovering from bowling. You know, bowling's just something that was fun with our class. But I don't know. You got UFC 166 coming up.
We do.
Houston. It's gonna be in Houston, Toyota Center.
Yeah.
It's gonna be pretty awesome. It's of course the third bout between Velasquez and Dos Santos, both splitting.
Let me stop you there. Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos.
Sorry, man. I'm not.
Not Giovanni Dos
That's
Santos.
why you're here, Kyle.
My
you know,
man.
that's why you're here.
My man.
But October 19th scheduled down at the Toyota Center in Houston, and it's the third bout between the two. Both split their opening. Well, I guess both are one apiece right now. So, who do you necessarily favor in this UFC 166?
Can I get back to that in a second? Because there was fireworks in this main event that I've just been waiting to get off my chest here.
Yeah, you can. Okay.
A lot of people around the MMA world have been talking about, obviously even before the fight, Gustafsson pulling off the upset. And in my opinion, and the opinion of a lot of others, he did. He should have had it on the cards. But the way it works in MMA is kind of the common phrase of, if you leave it in the judge's hands, you never really know which way it's going to go. So that's kind of what happened. And I guess you do have to decisively beat the champ to be the champ. But nonetheless, I thought Gustafsson did everything he needed to do. This is the first time we've really seen a chink in John Jones's armor. He's pretty much decimated every other former champ before him, and Gustafsson just took it to him all 5 rounds. He won the opening round decisively, and then 4 after that really could have gone either way, just depending on I guess how you saw it. But yeah, it was destruction. And there's actually a pretty wicked picture going around the Twitterverse right now of because normally at least one of the main eventers goes to the hospital and they can't make the presser, but in this event both Jones and Gustafsson were unable to make the presser because they both had to go straight to hospital because they laid such a beating on each other, which is pretty awesome. But in this picture that I'm talking about, we actually have John Jones on his back with a pretty messed up face, looking far worse for wear than Gustafsson, who's right beside him. They're kind of holding hands and giving a what's up in the picture, but the picture almost tells the tale of the match itself. So I was very surprised, and I won't be surprised at all if we go to an immediate rematch, which will not be good news for the number 1 contender, who just took out Ryan Bader, which is he's going to be in there.
Not a bad showing down at the ACC as well. Just over 15,000 fans in watching this. So mixed martial arts is a huge thing here up in Canada, especially out in Toronto. Lots of fans out there. Was it? Do you think they maybe could have got even more? Because the ACC, I think the total capacity there is about, I think it's 19,000.
Yeah, it might be 19,000 if we're talking hockey, basketball, and that sort of stuff with that similar framework. But the way the octagon is laid out and the actual the press seats and the celebrity seats that they have it around it, it really it takes up more space. So I bet you Dana White's a businessman, so I bet you he probably packed as many people in there that he could have. But yeah, I think he's got the framework down.
And just wanted to ask, this with UFC 165 being in Toronto, there's been obviously a lot of talk and speculation of why the UFC hasn't come to Vancouver. And doesn't come more often. Obviously, a lot of debate with Vancouver City Council and the complaints they've received. And apparently the UFC wants to be here, and they would, like to progress into hosting an event in Vancouver, but they're not going to because of all the hoops they have to jump through and all the red tape and all the high demands by the city. So, do you think we'll see the UFC back here, if at all?
Emad, I hope so. It had. Do you know when the last time they were in Vancouver?
No.
It was 3 years ago. It was 2010.
Yeah.
I believe it was June 12th. It was Liddell and Franklin facing off. And that was a sick event itself. It looked like Chuck Liddell of old until Rich caught him with I think a short right and knocked him out. I think that was actually the last fight of Chuck's career as well. But that has nothing to do why they're not coming to Vancouver. There's a few places in North America, especially big hotspots like Vancouver and like New York, who have just not jumped on the bandwagon yet. So I think it really does have to do with some legislation and just educating some people on the safety in the sport. And we've got it sanctioned some of the biggest fight capitals in the world. So it's just a matter of time, but I think it already has taken too long. And 3 years is too long to come back.
Yeah, and you have places all around North America begging for this event, and places like here, just it's not going to happen. And it's just truly a shame because the fans out here would love to see the event, but
Vancouver's a hotbed,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah. But you were back to you. You were talking about our next 166.
Yes, UFC
right?
166, October 19th.
My boy.
Yes.
So
basically, I wanted to know what your perspective, a huge MMA fan like yourself, basically everything that there is to know about the sport.
I don't know about everything, but I
here at
think
BCIT, everyone knows. You know what you're talking about. Basically, who do you got
in the main event?
In the main event, yes.
What's your prediction?
In a raucous crowd in the Honda Center.
It's really tough. Okay, so if I'm gonna bet with my wallet, smart money's on Kane. Just because their first meeting was so short, it was really hard to tell. JDS clipped him behind the ear, knocked his equilibrium, TKO'd him within like a minute and a half or less. In their second meeting, it was a one-sided, basically beatdown of Kane on JDS. It was 5 rounds. Kane looked unscathed. JDS looked like hamburger meat all over his face. And it's really tough because Junior's probably one of my top 2 fighters of all time. Like, I just love the way he fights. He's a humble dude. He's vicious striking, and it's pretty much always a finish with that guy. But yeah, unfortunately, my heart says Junior, and I'd love to see him win because he's just such a cool dude. But Kane, I think, is the more complete fighter, and he really has the tools to keep it wherever he wants to go.
Out of all the main events coming up until, I guess, the end of December, which one are you looking forward to most?
You know this answer. Yeah, no.
Is it December? You think it's in December?
Actually, that's tough. That's really tough. I think in terms of something that I've just been waiting for since the original fight happened would be the Silva-Weidman rematch. That just
December 28th, yes.
Oh, man.
UFC 168.
And I could talk for days about that because there are people that are just like, this is just the the changing of the guard and blah, 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 blah. And it is and it isn't, and I just think that this rematch is really going to show people what Anderson Silva can be when he's a focused Anderson Silva and he's actually challenged. Because there's 2 parts to his game. I guess it's twofold. The first part is he is elusive, but he's also kind of cocky, and he wills guys into this striking match so he can find these holes. And Weidman obviously did his homework and wasn't getting lulled into this mind game. And so Silva let his guard down. He did a little kind of, I think, got clipped on the chin a little bit, and then faked like he was a little bit wobbled, and that fake was just enough for him to actually come over for Weidman to come over the top and just knock him out, and then TK him on the ground with maybe 1 or 2 more punches. But yeah, Silva does not want to go out like that. He has nothing to prove in this sport anymore. He was dominant for so long.
Yeah,
in my opinion, still obviously I think one of the greatest pound per pounds of all time. But I think my heart money and my wallet money are on Silva for a first round KO. I think he's just gonna make a stamp and be like, this is what it should have been. I shouldn't have taken you seriously, but that's what's up.
Well, Mr. Taylor, it's been an honor. I know it's been a pleasure having you here in studio with us.
We hope that you will be back.
We know he's going to be back. We know he's going to be back here with
you're
with
only
our podcast.
down the hallway. So.
Exactly. I know he's got lots of stuff to do tonight. He's got his homework to do. He's got basically get ready.
Was this the first show?
It was the first show.
I'm very happy to be a part of your inaugural program.
Yep.
It sounds great, fellas. I'd be happy to be back. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I appreciate it,
Thanks,
Kyle.
buddy.
Cheers,
Kyle Taylor in studio. Kyle Taylor in studio with us today as he was able to talk some MMA action with us, of course, going over the weekend. And we're going to probably get him in, coming up in October here. Got a couple big matches up, so make sure you stay tuned for him.
We'll have him in twice. We'll preview and analyze again. And Yeah, he did a good job.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And love the insight from outside perspective, of course, with our resources here at BCIT. We're going to use them to the fullest advantage with Mr. Kyle Taylor, and he knows his stuff. And whatever can make this podcast even better, we will help you out in that sense. And basically get right to it. But, Emad, I got to tell you something. I guess we got cut off early. I don't know why, but it just stopped. Everything's just shut down here. So basically our first segment of the show wasn't there. It cut off almost about a minute in. So I guess we got to recap the Vancouver Canucks and what went on in the last couple days. It's something the Vancouver Canucks need to start getting into the habit of. They really need to start putting in consistent efforts night after night like they did last night. I was fortunate to be at the game last night. Saw some great plays from lots of players. Really, a guy who stood out in my mind who I've kind of been ranking on a bit here in the preseason so far in Bo Horvat. That number 1 pick for the Vancouver Canucks this year before Hunter Shinkaruk got 9th overall trade for Corey Schneider. He looked good last night. He had a couple points, but that line of Santorelli, Shinkaruk, and Horvat looked sensational. They all chipped in for, I believe it was, 6 or 7 points between the three of them. And it was good to see that 14 different Canucks were able to hit the score sheet last night. And Daniel Henrik weren't really noticeable out there. They got their chances on the PK. Vancouver fans antsy to see that this year and what they can bring. There was one particular penalty kill attempt in that, I believe it was the first period, where the Vancouver Canucks had the Sedins out there killing a penalty, and they tried to create something offensively. It almost worked too, and almost drew a penalty as well. So this is something the Vancouver Canucks are going to be excited about, especially their fans here in Vancouver.
That's what they will need to do if they want to win this year, and it is to get a combination of scoring. I mean, you had Chris Higgins chip in, Mike Santorelli chip in, Tom Sestito. He scored a goal.
That's the beauty of it, because Tom Sestito, I thought, played a very good game last night. But if you go ask head coach John Tortorella, he's not impressed with his.
He's out of shape.
He is an out of shape
with his
guy.
Conditioning, and that's what he said in the post game. And well, if you're gonna score goals like that, I don't think you can complain too much from your fourth line enforcer. It was an impressive win. I mean, albeit it was against the Phoenix Coyotes, who are woeful. I mean, they will be again this year, though.
And speaking of Coyotes, though, like, the two guys that are missing, and Mike Ribeiro and Shane Doan, really, when it comes down to it, that's all they have offensively. Yeah. And if you put in performances without those two, like they did last night, yeah, they mustered 22 shots on Roberto Luongo. He was beaten once, but it's going to be a tough go-around for the Phoenix Coyotes, especially in that tough Pacific Division that the Vancouver Canucks are in. And that mentions, like, that's the first time Phoenix and Vancouver have met so far. They're going to see a lot of each other this year.
And I was impressed with Max Domi. I thought he played really well.
Him and Gilbert Brûlé.
Yeah. First-round pick. Good future for the kid. I mean, he was stick handling all over the ice and looked really good in the attacking zone. I mean, they got some. They're obviously going to be the last place team, and that's hard for a city that's struggling for attendance. They don't know what their future is going to be like in the next few years, and but the Canucks, I mean, don't fault them for beating up on Phoenix, and that's what they'll have to do. Now, tonight's a different story. They go into San Jose, a place they've had a lot of trouble in the last few years. Obviously, a lot of bad memories of the playoff run last year where they lost both games in San Jose. But that's a place where they'll need to pick up a few wins in the season, as San Jose is now in our division, and so is LA. I mean, you got two rivals there, and those rivalries will continue into the regular season. And
that's also the beauty of that, because over the last couple of years with the playoff matchups for the Vancouver Canucks, those teams, San Jose and LA, have been there. Vancouver Canucks have got the best out of them before in the Western Conference Final in their Cup run in 2011. But LA has really become one of the tougher rivals for the Vancouver Canucks as well. Now they're playing in the same division. You look at a team like Chicago and Calgary, who used to be the Vancouver Canucks' top two rivals. Calgary, of course, faded off in the last couple of years here with the changes going on out there. But right now, if you look at it, Chicago won't be playing Vancouver as much as they used to. And that rivalry might just tail off just a little bit. Jonathan Toews speaking last week of Roberto Luongo as the best goaltender in the NHL in his perspective. The LA Kings, they got another tough team. Willie Mitchell is on the rebound. He's coming back for the LA Kings this year to make that defense even sturdier. And Drew Doughty, he just keeps on going, rolling down there. Dustin Penner, he's going back to Anaheim now. So that's a big loss for the LA Kings. But I really don't think...
I mean, he played amazing in the playoff run. They still got a team that could win the cup, and they did last year as well. You're in a tough spot if you're Vancouver, and realistically, I think the Canucks fans should be happy if the team finishes third, and looks like that's what's going to happen. Now, did you get the suspension part, or is that gone too?
For, I believe, yes, Dale Weiss was 3 games in the preseason here, and Zach Kassian was 8.
Did it delete it?
No, it did. I don't believe it did, but we'll just recap that, of course. But
so good news out of the Toronto. The Phil Kessel only receiving 3-game suspension, and
preseason
those
only.
3 games are just the preseason. Lot of debate over if he should have got more. I mean, I think 3 games is okay for what he got, but it has to be regular season games. I mean, who cares if you miss the preseason? And
you look at David Clarkson, another Toronto Maple Leaf. He's getting that automatic 10-game suspension, but that doesn't kick in until the beginning of the regular season. So where is the, I guess, reluctancy not to be suspending guys, but also the fact, where's the consistency from Brendan Shanahan and the head discipline of players in the NHL? Because Brendan Shanahan, a player himself, he got into a couple bouts like that back in his day. I know he takes every case into consideration, but it's also sometimes you got to question decisions made by the league, and one of them, I believe, Zach Kassian got basically the short end of the stick.
Honestly, I'm totally unbiased here, and you might argue against this, but if you look at the play, Zach Kassian comes into the corner. He's trying to throw a hit. Now, he misses the hit, and he's off balance. Now, he's turning around, and his stick hits Gagne in the face. Now, if he tried to do that another 100 times, he wouldn't be able to. It was completely incidental, which doesn't excuse it, I know. But if that stick, the same play happens, and if the stick hits Gagne in the shoulder or in the helmet, no one's going to think twice about the incident. There's not going to be a replay, and play goes on. But they solely based this suspension on the injury that Sam Gagne suffered. And that's not the case. They don't do that for other suspensions. So you just got to make it clear. Is that going to be a factor, or is it not going to be a factor? If Phil Kessel hits John Scott and tomahawks him in the ankle with his skate, and John Scott breaks an ankle, you think Phil Kessel's getting 3 games in the preseason?
No, probably not. And that's where a top player in the NHL, in Phil Kessel, a 40-plus goal scorer, he can be there. He's a very huge asset to the Toronto Maple Leafs, one of their best players. And it really isn't going to be a loss for Phil Kessel. He gets a little bit of rest before going into the season here, 3 games off. But I wouldn't be surprised if Randy Carlyle was going to sit him for a couple games going down the stretch of the preseason, because they want him rested for the start of the season. And I think it's just going to be, it's not a big loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs losing Phil Kessel, but it's a huge loss losing David Clarkson there. Highly coveted acquisition of free agency, the one that got away from most teams except the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he had no problem signing in Toronto. And another guy, also not too shabby, and feels a relief of signing in Toronto, Mason Raymond, of course, signing that 1-year deal, $1 million over the weekend.
And I said it before, he even got the PTO with Toronto, and this is what he's got to do, Mason Raymond. He's got to go to a club and sign for way less than he's worth. $1 million, I mean, you can argue Mason Raymond at his best is a 2.5, even a $3 million forward. Now, you go to Toronto after you've had 2 bad years in Vancouver. You play for $1 million. You put up 20 goals. You get around 45 to 50 points. And then you sign your 3-year deal. So that's what the right path for Mason Raymond. He did make the team fairly, and he's going to get a chance to revive his career in a good place as well. He's playing with skilled forwards. He's going to be on a fast skating team that honestly will put up a lot of offense, and that's in favor of Mason Raymond. Now it's going to be interesting to see if he can stay healthy, if the back issue is not bothering him anymore, and how he gets along with the Toronto media. I mean, he thinks that we were hard on him. He can go there, and if he struggles,
he'll hear it.
Yeah, the Toronto media is. I mean, Vancouver's been known for the worst English-speaking media in the league. Obviously, Montreal apparently is the worst out of all of them, but I mean, Toronto's not far behind. So.
Yeah, but also Mason Raymond, who is 28 years old, isn't a young guy on this team, so he's definitely got experience for sure. The former Camrose Kodiak out of the Alberta Junior Hockey League, but Vancouver Canucks, looking at his numbers the past couple of years, hasn't been good with the Canucks. Of course, 22 points in 46 games last year. In the 50 he was able to play in 2011, 2012, he only had 20 points, and that really almost did it for Mason Raymond. That was almost the last straw for him in a Vancouver Canucks uniform. They took the chance on him last year. Didn't work out. 22 points in 46 games for a guy of his caliber isn't necessarily all too spectacular. But also another guy like signing a deal this past weekend as well. Brendan Morrow, former Stars captain, had some time out in Pittsburgh to try and make their cup run. Basically, he was able to sign a deal, and he took less money than what he was basically worth. He took it at $1 million for Brendan Morrow, and this is something the former Portland Winterhawk, he just wanted to play, and he's going to play. He spent tons of time in a Dallas Stars uniform, almost 15 years there, and was able to get he was almost a point-per-game player last year for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the 15 games down the stretch, and this guy has over 800 games experience. So Brendan Morrow, that's a good pickup for the St. Louis Blues. And former Canuck, of course, Max Lapierre is out there as well. So skilled players still have a chance to shine. Ryan Whitney's still on the UFA right now. But let's get back to the Canucks here for a second. Eddie Lack right now is the only goaltender other than Roberto Luongo still in Vancouver in training camp. Looks like he's going to be the backup goaltender. But what if something goes wrong?
Here's why we got Eddie. I mean, Eddie Lack is the backup on this team. Don't get me wrong, he's a good goalie, but not because of his goaltending ability, but slightly because of his contract. I mean, we don't know if he's going to be the goaltender he was in the AHL when he's playing with the big boys, but you got to look at it this way. He's making $750,000 this year.
On a one-way deal, too.
Yeah, and a team struggling. I mean, the cap's not increased yet, so
it decreased, of course.
Yeah,
it dropped $6-7 million, I think it was, over the summer.
You see there why they need an inexpensive backup goaltender, and Eddie Lack fits that. If he comes in 10, maybe 15 times this year, and puts up a 500 record, then you're happy. But if Luongo goes down, then that's when you need to make a move. Or if Lack comes in and he's just getting shell-shocked, there's some options out there. I mean, Jose Theodore still unsigned.
Tim Thomas, but that's something the Vancouver Canucks know
would
never work here in Vancouver. You're kidding me, right? arch enemies there between Luongo and Tim Thomas. But hey, you never know. Anything could happen with the Vancouver Canucks. But I really do believe Eddie Lack's going to get his chance this year. He's almost 25 years old. He's had his chance. He's done his time in the minors. It's his time to shine now. And the first year I watched Eddie Lack play in a Canucks uniform was probably about 4 years ago, preseason. The guys had just signed him, and basically he was out in Calgary. It was one of those split squad games, so there was a game going on at Rogers Arena 1 at the Scotiabank Saddledome, formerly the Pengrove Saddledome. And Eddie Lack was sensational in a 3-2 loss. He made over 45 saves in that hockey game. But Eddie Lack, if he can return to what he was before his hip injury that cost him to have some off-season hip surgery, he's going to be one heck of a backup goaltender. And I expect him to play at least 18 to 20 games this year for the Vancouver Canucks, and John Tortorella is saying that. And he should have a record over 500 because he is an elite goaltender, and I think he can really pull off a over 500 record.
So here's your options if Luongo goes down, and that's barring no one picks up one of these goalies. You got Ilya Bryzgalov, still unsigned. He got bought out, of course, by the Flyers. You got Tim Thomas, obviously. Rick DiPietro. I would be shocked to see if he ever plays again.
Let's sign another 15-year deal.
Jose Theodore, that's Jose Theodore. That's your most likely. And Johan Hedberg.
I was looking at him too, yeah.
Former Canuck. He'll only ask for about $1 million. And he's been a backup all his career, so he knows how to do it. He knows how to come in and get the job done. But that's about it. So let's hope Luongo stays healthy, and let's hope that Eddie Lack can be a serviceable backup. I mean, in this division, you can't afford to have your backup goalie come in and automatically think about, oh, well, we didn't win tonight because he was in, or you can't afford to lose those games just because Eddie Lack's in and not Luongo.
And even a guy who would be a sensational pickup as a backup goaltender if Eddie Lack is forced to maybe take the reins. Jeff Delorier, he spent a lot of time in Edmonton. Very cheap they could get him for, maybe even off of just picking him up. But he was only making $612,000 last year. And he was with Minnesota, of course, getting traded there. But he's one of maybe the underdog guys who might get signed by a team who's in desperate need of a goaltender. But Matthew Guerin spent tons of time in this league as well. He's 35 years old. He would just be there for basically a backup plan for any team. But I really believe if Roberto Luongo comes into camp this year, which he has, I look very shaky in his first outing in Edmonton. But
he was solid last night. I mean,
he looked good. He looked good last night. He looked calm, poised once the game had gotten going, especially in that second and third period.
There's a couple of good saves he did make. He's obviously known to be a slow starter. Always had a rough time in the month of October. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can get over that. And that he needs to. He really does. It's an Olympic year, and he's battling for the number one spot for Canada as well. I mean, it's not certain that he's the starting goalie of that team. So he's got a lot to prove, and I think he's up for it. I mean, he is the leader. I mean, he's not the captain, but you can look at him as the most experienced Canuck, and a guy that they're paying $5.3 million to get the job done. And I know he's upset about not being traded, but at the end of the day, he's got what he was asking for, which is a starting position in the NHL, and it's really up to how good of a season he has to see if the Canucks can get in the playoffs and do more. So that's Roberto Luongo.
Now, switching sides from a little hockey and maybe into the soccer format here, the MLS. Of course, Vancouver Whitecaps. Big games coming up here. Real Salt Lake this Saturday. That's going to be a very tough game. BC Place going to be rocking again. You, of course, can catch the game on TSN2. But then they got some arch rivals coming up with their neighbors down to the south, Portland and Seattle, back-to-back.
Cascadia rivalry
Cascadia
there.
Cup.
Yeah, I mean, good game by the Caps. Really, really good road victory, especially just how they did it. I mean, 3-0.
Against Montreal, of course, a very top team in the Eastern Conference.
And they hadn't had too much luck against the Montreal. Now, you look at the Caps in the standings there.
They're in that
just
sixth
one
spot.
point. One spot out of the playoffs.
4 points back, Colorado there.
Chasing Colorado, but they do have
a game in hand.
A game in hand on the Rapids. So if they do win coming up this weekend, you do climb just 1 point back of that last playoff spot. So I mean, they just got to keep winning. That's all they got to do is
from
ties, wins, and they don't have much room for error. And I know Martin Rennie is calm, and he believes the team can do it. I mean, they've had hot streaks near the end of the season before, and obviously last year when they went into LA and it's nearly pulled off a huge upset. So you just got to get production out of guys like Camilo, guys like Rio Cocker, and so keep it going.
And when you look at their schedule for the next 3 weeks, it's going to be tough. You look at it, Seattle sitting in first spot, Real Salt Lake this weekend, they're in second, Portland in third. You go down, you got the Galaxy in there as well, but those top 3 teams, those are your next 3 games. If you don't muster you got possible 9 points that you could collect off those 3 teams, you're banking at least, you want 6. You want 6 if you're a Vancouver Whitecaps player and a fan, of course, if you're looking for these guys to make the push into the playoffs. But it's going to be a tough go for the Whitecaps here. 4 points back, as you mentioned, Emad. But it's going to be a tough one down the stretch. You mentioned no margin for error whatsoever. But then you switch sides over to the East, and then you got 2 other Canadian teams there as well. Toronto not doing so well this year, not so hot in that 9th spot.
Don't know what's been the issue with the Toronto FC franchise.
It's been tough out there, and especially as a soccer fan out there.
Ever since coming into the league, they've always been in the bottom. And you see expansion teams like Seattle, Vancouver, Montreal, all come and just leapfrog the Toronto FC, and it's just they've fired how many coaches and got rid of so many GMs, and it's just not worked out for them. And with the market they have, they do sell out the stadium, and you wonder how long that's going to continue if they're continue to be run at this way, and bottom of the league each year. And one team that was at once the only Canadian team in the MLS, now they're not very relevant anymore with Vancouver and Montreal in there. And so it hasn't worked out there, and it's sad to see.
And while teams who have come over from Europe, of course, playing some games against the MLS, you can tell the difference in level of play, of course. I know a couple years back, Manchester United back down in Seattle, I was able to check that game out, 8-1 victory. And then you got Man City, who were able to play the Whitecaps a couple years ago as well. Yeah. Chelsea's been over, Liverpool's been over. These teams from England have been over. Real Madrid was here a couple years ago out in Toronto. They had a game against TFC. But you know the level of the MLS is picking up for sure. Teams are starting to become better. Of course, the new team coming in New York soon. The difference is it's basically day and night over there. And here, it's almost on the back burner a little too much.
Here's the difference between MLS and Europe and the EPL, La Liga, all that stuff. The MLS, the players are very athletic. They're all-star athletes. I mean, they jump. They're fast, but they're not soccer players. They're not tactically and technically skilled players. You see players.
There is the handful, though. When you look through the league, like Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane, you can go down the list. Nigel Reo-Coker, who spent some time over in Europe, of course. But there's that handful.
They're just missing that last bit you need to become a complete soccer player.
And I believe it all comes down to minor soccer programs throughout North America, in the States and Canada. It has gotten better in the U.S. for sure. Canada's still not there. It's been... I'm not even going to want to talk about this, but the Canada's men's national soccer team has been a joke. It really has since 1986, it's happening somewhere between the ages of, I think, 15 and 16, because the involvement of kids playing soccer in Canada is insane.
Is huge, and there's something's happening to kids between their teenage years of maybe 13, 14, 15, and 16 that they just drop. And then you look at the 18, 19-year-olds or under 21 level, and there's nothing there. And even if you look at the national side, whatever players that we have developed have an international background, so they just leave. It's just nothing there. I mean, how long has it been since they qualified for the World Cup? They did it once. They keep disappointing in Gold Cup and CONCACAF matchups. I mean, they've moved down to what are they now, like 100th?
It's something stupid like that. But when you look at it, really a couple huge guys who have really come out of Canada. Really, you can't say many. Dwayne De Rosario, maybe one of the top players out of Canada. But even then, you can't rely on one guy to lead a country, especially like teams against the very stacked up United States of America, who you play quite a bit in trying to qualify for World Cup qualifiers, and it's I don't know if it's something to do with managing at the age of like 8 to 12, because that's when players who want to become professional need to start learning the basics of how to become a professional. At that age, you think it's maybe stupid. You go over to Europe, these kids are playing almost when they're born, 4 years old. They're already in a league playing, and the whole thing about not counting scores now and just playing for fun is not really going to help, especially at that age 8 level where kids really need to start. Yeah, they can have fun, but they really need to start. If Canada wants to become a top team in men's soccer, especially, they're going to have to pick things up down at that level.
What is also interesting to see, I mean, Canada, the men's team is 106th overall in the world, but the women's team is just so dominant, and it's just like, what's the difference? What are the women doing right that the Canadians can't get going on the men's team level? I mean, obviously, the girls in Canada get more opportunity to play the game itself, but it's just, it's sad to see. I mean, there's so much great soccer involvement in this country and in this province. I mean, you see their men's level in amateur soccer is just filled, but it's just they're lacking that final step, and doesn't look like it's going to happen for a while for Canada and making the World Cup. And they're not going to be there in Brazil, and it doesn't look like they're going to be there in where's the next one anyway?
Rio.
Yeah. After that.
Oh, it's you got me stumped here.
I know it's in Qatar in 2022.
Yes. So but if you move on over out to the Capital One Cup today out in England, quite a few going on. Chelsea was in action.
4-0 Spurs.
Chelsea was in action. 2-0 over Swindon there. Southampton pulled off 2-0 win over Bristol City. Watford and Norwich, that is 3-2 at the moment. Not a full-time score just yet. I'm surprised why that's not updated, of course. Emad, your Spurs getting that done over Aston Villa 4-0. Burnley 2-1 over Nottingham Forest. Also in action was Derby, they losers to Leicester. Man City in action over Wigan 5-0 there. Sunderland 2-0 over Peterborough, and Fulham 2-1 over Everton. And of course,
some big matches coming up in the EPL this week.
Yeah,
you got Tottenham playing against Chelsea. That's always a good London rivalry. I was actually in Tottenham this summer, and speaking to the locals there, they said that not necessarily is the North London derby between Tottenham and Arsenal. It's not the biggest matchup they look for anymore. It's Chelsea, and it's interesting to see that, and especially with the Spurs becoming the big club that they are now. They're just a clash of two heavyweights. Spurs, honestly, first place in the league. They spent a lot of money after the departure of Gareth Bale, and things are looking up. I mean, new stadium around the corner. It's going to be a $400 million project in North London. They keep going out, and they're winning this season. I mean, they've only given up one goal in now what seems to be 8 games into the season. I mean, that's a good record, and 12 points. I mean, they suffered that loss to Arsenal, but it was unfair. I thought they dominated Arsenal that one week, and now they have Chelsea. Now they have a real test to see if all this hype with the new signings and the record and the great goal scoring record, and if that's actually legit. So they play Chelsea this weekend, and a lot coming into that game will be spoken as to if this Tottenham side is actually legit. And
you Emad, of course, speak of the North London Derby. I just want to touch on Derby this past weekend, the Manchester Derby.
Yes,
that was
unfortunate for you.
Well, not necessarily. I believe as a neutral insight here, that's a game with City and United. It was bound to happen, but in the end, you didn't think it was going to happen. so suddenly with United, of course. Dreadful in the first, I want to say, 75 minutes of that hockey game before they really started to turn something up. But also, I think the news of Robin van Persie not being able to play, straining his groin the day before in training, and losing him, that's one of your top players, and it's tough. If you pull Edin Dzeko or Samir Nasri out of Man City's lineup just the day before, you got to fill that hole. Danny Welbeck came in for relief of Robin van Persie, but 4-1 City wins.
Here's what I think happened there. I mean, you got David Moyes coming into the United. He's a new manager after however many years, and the team hasn't really figured out its identity. And then you got Man City coming in, who always get up for this game. I mean, it's their the biggest game of the year, and they are obviously going to come at United 110%, and it was just a wrong time for that rivalry to be, and a wrong time for Man United, as they haven't really figured out what they're all about with the new manager. And it was evident that, right off the bat, you saw City had more jump, City had more intuition, they had a lot more upbeat play, and it's gonna happen. It happened a couple years ago too, with a 6-1 win. So I mean, if you're United, you shake it off, and you just start finding a way to win matches. And if you can get anywhere near the level you were at last year, and you'll be up there. And but yeah, United fans, don't be surprised if you don't win it this year. I mean, everyone has improved, and with the signing of Fellaini, that's really all they've done, and they've, really haven't filled those gaps that other teams have with the signings they did. So, yeah, it's just when Fergie's not there, you can't get by with the same guys. You got to go out and buy. You got to change up the lineup. And
Ferguson just knew his players so well. He knew what their weaknesses, their strengths were, and that's when managers at a team for 26 and a half seasons. You're gonna be a successful team, one of the successful teams in the world, and coming off that big title win last year, you said it best. David Moyes coming in. It's gonna take some time here for United to get back to the elite level that they were under Sir Alex, and basically, if you're guys like Wayne Rooney, Robin van Persie, you want to just get going again here on Saturday against West Brom. So that's something. They do look good in Champions League play so far, finally getting a win 4-2 at home last week. They got another game coming up next week against Shakhtar. That's going to be a doozy. So Man United, it's going to take time for them. It's, of course, just the first month and a half of the season so far. 4 league games gone. You got another 34 left. So Manchester United, one of the elite teams in the EPL, they like turning it on just after October. So maybe look for that and see what goes on there. But looks like we are running out of some time today, Emad. It's been a pleasure. It's going to be a great year. We're going to have tons of these week after week, and it's going to be a fun one.
And hopefully they get better as we go on. And obviously the first one, a little
technical difficulties at the beginning there.
Edges, but we'll make it work. And yeah, they should get better. I mean, we are in school, so. Yeah.
Exactly. So that is it for today, September 24th. We are going to sign off here. You have been listening to Tyson and Emad on your podcast today. It is now 5 o'clock our time, so we are going to get on out of here and head home. Enjoy the sports. We'll recap everything next week for you. Until then, stay tuned. We will try and get out on the social media world as well. And you can follow Emad on Twitter at...
Oh, and okay, so we'll do that. And it's EMAD, Emad, and Agahi. So no space there, at Emad Agahi. And yeah, I mean, we will be doing this again, and we'll try to get some more interactive stuff with Twitter going on and stuff like that. And yeah, we will.
And you can give me a shout and follow, I should say, at RealTSN _Tfedor, and you can give me a follow there on Twitter. Other than that, you enjoy the rest of the week, and first week of fall. It is now the first week of fall, so you can stay tuned, and we'll keep you up to date next week on sports. Have a good one.